If you leave it to the executor of an estate would not have to do it. And then, I don't know, there's some others as well. And this doesn't apply to land, right? The reason it doesn't apply to land is because it's residential property, so it has to be a property that has a residence on it. So little tidbits like that, I don't know if they're going to be quite as important or not. As long as we're here though, let's get another point on the exam, if it comes up at all. Do you remember that the mineral, oil, and gas rights disclosure is a part of the Residential Property Disclosure Act, okay? But the difference is the exceptions to the MOG. The MOG does not exempt whom? New homes. Why? Whose fault is it?
The builder in Texas.
D.R. Horton. It's D.R. Horton's own fault. That's right. If you remember that, it will help you if that question comes up at all. We did great. We got out of Chapter 7 without any problem at all. So now we're in basic contract law. Definitions, bilateral versus unilateral, bilateral, mutual exchange of promises as opposed to unilateral, one party making a promise contingent upon the other party doing a certain act. Do you remember this? What's the major type of unilateral contract that we talk about in this one? Your option contracts are considered unilateral contracts. Then as I continue forward, valid, voidable, and void. Valid means it's enforceable. It's enforceable among both parties, okay? Buyer and seller are mutually bound. A voidable contract is a contract that has a mistake such that it allows one party to walk away. And let me remind you, not because I think this is going to happen in the field, but because we're preparing for a test, don't enter into a contract with a minor, M-I-N-O-R. Why do you not enter into a contract with a minor? What can they do? They can walk away up until they're when? 18. When if they stay in after 18, it is said that they have ratified the contract, okay? Don't enter into a contract with a drunk person because they might not know the repercussions of their actions. They can walk away, right? Do you recognize that what I'm describing to you both are voidable contracts? Don't enter into a contract with an insane person, and I'm talking about literally insane. When you get in the field, you will think everyone's insane, but I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people that are literally adjudicated that they can't handle their own affairs because they don't have contractual capacity. That's not voidable. That one is what? Void. That one is void. They never have the ability to enter into a contract. And then also talking about void, what is the problem with entering into a verbal contract to sell real estate? It's unenforceable. Is it illegal? No. It's not illegal. It's just unenforceable. It's a violation of what? Starting with an S? Statute of frauds. So either party could walk away since it's unenforceable. That's about as tight as you need to be on those topics right there if you understand everything I just said. Valid, voidable, and void. Essential elements of a valid contract. On this one, let's pay attention to what the words mean separately as well as together. Mutual assent. Do you understand the offer and acceptance concept? Your offers have to be unambiguous. Do you remember the word illusory? Offers should not be illusory. Okay, I should know what it is that you have offered. I think the example that I use in class oftentimes is, I want to sell your house. My legal description is Lindsay's house in the Woodward Downs subdivision. Well, is that a legal description? Not if she has 3 in there, it's not. Because if she has 3, that's completely ambiguous, right? Bless you. You told me earlier you were finished, okay? That is ambiguous because she has 3 for lack of a legal description. Unfortunately, that contract might not be binding for lack of a legal description, right? So offers should be unambiguous. Acceptance should be unconditional. What do we call it when you scratch out an offer and then you make me a new offer? That is a counter offer. A counter offer is first of all a rejection. Remember that. That's hugely important for the exam, that a counter offer is in fact a rejection. And then you're making me a new offer as well. Okay? What got me started down that path, we were talking about, offer and acceptance. Okay, mutual assent. Consideration. Consideration is something in exchange of something of like value. I'm not overly concerned about the definition of consideration, but you understand that contracts are based on the concept of consideration. I can't get something for nothing. There has to be consideration. What I am concerned about is you confusing earnest money with consideration. Do you have to have consideration for a contract to be valid?
Yes.
Yes. Does there have to be earnest money?
No.
There does not have to be earnest money. Why do we collect the earnest money? To show good faith, to show that the buyer has the ability to scrape together funds, and in the event of a breach, the earnest money goes to whom? The seller. In our contract, as what start with the letter L? Liquidated damages. Liquidated damages. Okay? Did all those words sound familiar to you? That's great. Hey, listen, while you're on the roll, Dennis, while you're on the roll, let's go ahead and get a strong one right here as well. What's going to happen in the event that a deal falls apart and there is a dispute over the return or forfeiture of earnest money? Where's the money going to stay? Trust account until we get written agreement of other parties, or a court of competent jurisdiction tells us what to do with it, or we give both parties 90 days notice and turn it over to the clerk of court. All of this was predicated on the word what starting with the letter D? Dispute. Dispute. This is the dispute rule. Let me tell you what I mean. Just some dandelion. That's what a dandelion. That's what it is. Let me tell you why this is important as long as we're talking about earnest money. If the buyer breaches the offer to purchasing contract, and I'm talking about 2T, the way the 2T is written, okay? Our standard offer to purchase. If the buyer breaches, and remember they can't breach during due diligence, but after due diligence, if the buyer breaches the contract, then what does the seller get? The earnest money as liquidated damages, right? In the event that the seller breaches the contract, what happens to the earnest money? The buyer gets it back, but that was his money to start with. That's small consolation. He also gets his due diligence money back. And also, he would also get what start with the letter C? Compensatory damages. He will be made whole. In other words, for money that the buyer has laid out for tests and stuff like that, okay? Liquidated versus compensatory. Somehow we got those in there. All this started with the word consideration. Consideration is something for something. Earnest money is not consideration, okay? So we followed two paths on that. And then finally, capacity of the parties. We talked about voidable just a moment ago, so that handles that. And then contracts have to be for a lawful objective, which fortunately ours are. That won't be a big deal for you.
So basically, essentially, a difference contract doesn't need to be in writing, but then it's not impossible.
Now, keep in mind, keep in mind, Chapter 8, this is going to be hard to go back to, actually Chapter 9. What happened in that chapter, it was talking about the essential elements of all contracts. All contracts don't have to be in writing. Why do real estate contracts have to be in writing? Because of the statute of frauds. Now, if it's a real estate contract and it's not in writing, it's unenforceable. Okay? So the reason that in writing is not on this list is because it's talking about contracts in general, not just real estate contracts. But note in this class that virtually all contracts we talk about must be in writing for one reason or the other. Please take your time on this question. Why do agency agreements have to be in writing? Because the real estate commission said so. Why do contracts conveying interest in real property have to be in writing? Because of the statute of frauds. You with me, Jeff? Okay. Almost all of them have to be in writing. So the question is, why? Real estate commission, if it's agency, and then contracts to convey statute of frauds. In fact, that's what it says. Discharge of contracts, a little bit here. I'd love it if you understood the difference between a novation and assignment. But since we're late in the game, Lindsay, here's what you're going to do. An assignment and novation are the same thing. But a novation, I assign not only my rights, but also my obligations. Therefore, novation includes a release of what? Did you say liability? Release of liability. Think of novation and assignment as being the same thing. But if I assign my rights to you and you don't complete the transaction, I'm liable. But in novation, I can transfer not only my rights, but also my obligations. Therefore, I am released from liability. That really, if it comes up at all, would be the thing that you would concentrate on, the difference between an assignment and a novation. That's everything to do with the release of liability. Okay? Talk to me about it later if you want more, but if you get more, it'll probably just confuse you. So I'll stick to that. Full performance is a great way to discharge a contract. Everybody did what they said they were going to do. That's fantastic. Impossibility of performance. Now, be careful here. Discharge of a contract. Does death cause a contract to terminate? It does not. Death, the contract is written, buyer and seller, their heirs and successors. You do understand if we write a question about this, that it clearly is going to be from the seller's side. The seller goes under contract and then dies, well, the contract is still binding upon his heirs, right? Impossibility of performance means something like the house blew down, and that's why the transaction fell apart. Operation of law, I've said this multiple times throughout this class, for our purposes, bankruptcy has the effect that it terminates contracts that you're in. If you'll stick with that, you'll be fine with bankruptcy. What else was I going to say about, I don't know. I don't know if they would go this route. But do you remember me talking last week about the concept of accord and satisfaction? You may have a lease agreement that has an accord and satisfaction paragraph in it. And what that basically means is the landlord says, I'll let you out of your lease if you pay me 2 months rent. You pay me $2,000, you don't have to fulfill the rest of your lease. If the buyer does that, not the buyer, I'm sorry, the tenant. If the tenant does that, is that a breach? It's not actually. It's actually fulfillment of the contract. It's different terms than what we originally accepted, but you gave me money and my apartment back. We fulfilled the contract, just under different terms. Okay? So, most of you seem like you're okay on that. If it comes up, that's an interesting thing to know. Remedy for breach of contracts, money damages. You breach of contract, it's going to cost you money. Do you remember liquidated versus compensatory, just like we talked about a moment ago? Bam, that's fantastic. Are you okay with the concept of specific performance? We mentioned that a little bit earlier today. You need to understand the word specific performance. The seller just changed his mind. Buyer said, you're going to perform according to the way the contract's written. If not, I'll take you to court, and courts will make you perform according to the way the contract's written. Not too worried about rescission. Rescission just returns the parties to their original position. Agency agreement. Somebody in my night class, we just started going over this in my night class, and they're like, what do you want me to know? What I want you to know is the fact that the Real Estate Commission, when it comes to agency agreements, they don't tell you what agency agreement to use. What they say is, if you work for a seller, you better have something in writing, because that's what our rule is. It could be an open agency, it could be an exclusive agency, and by far the most common is the exclusive right to sell. So far so good? What's the problem with an open agency agreement? Who's competing against me? Everybody, including the seller. In an exclusive agency agreement, you guys are on my side, but who's competing against me? The seller is competing against me. And then an exclusive right to sell, I can justify spending my time, my efforts, my money on that seller because I'm going to get paid regardless where the buyer comes from, as long as it occurs during the term of the listing agreement, right? And then we won't get to the point of going over these contracts because that would clearly take a ton of time. But do you remember the concept of the extender or the override clause? The extender or the override clause? Okay, that's just a level 1 thing to you. So anyway, the types of agency agreements. Again, the key point there is that the Commission doesn't care which one you use. They just care that it's in writing. Your MLS may care, but the Commission doesn't. Note, I'm on the top of the next page. Let's see what this says. When soliciting for a listing, be careful of antitrust, boycotting laws, and do not call laws. Antitrust. Can I say that my firm's policy is that we charge 6%? Yes, I can. My firm's policy. Can I say that it's standard in this area for it to be 6%? Can I say it's a standard, Susie? No, I can't say that. I can't say it's a standard. In regards to boycotting, I don't like that law, you're over there. How about all of us not using that attorney? Is that okay for me to do? No. Is it okay for me to not use it if I don't like them? That's okay, all right? And then, of course, the do not call laws. Do not call people that are on the do not call list to make a solicitation call. What if it's a for sale by owner and my buyer says, I want to go see that house? Can I call him? Yes. I can call him on behalf of my buyer, not a solicitation call. And then remember the rules. Remember the rules. The established business relationship exemption. I can call someone who has requested information about my services. I can call them for up to how long?
3 months.
Up to 3 months. Up to 3 months. Even if they're on the do not call list. Even if they're on the do not call list until they ask me to do what? Stop calling. Okay? If I have actually provided them a service, I acted as their buyer or seller's agent, I can call them for up to how many months? 18 months, up to 18 months, unless they ask me to do what? Stop calling. If they ask me to stop calling, I should immediately put them on my personal do not call list there as well. Sounds good on that? And of course, you're not going to send any junk faxes or unsolicited emails. If you send unsolicited emails, please have a conspicuous opt-out option. And then if someone chooses that, please do it within 10 days. You okay on those? All right. Why did I write this? Also, make sure to, these have nothing to do with each other, so they were just random notes. I'm still at the top of the page. You with me? Also, make sure to get all required signatures. For example, if the house is owned as tenants by the entirety, agent must have signatures of husband and wife for the listing agreement to be valid. Do you see what that's saying there? You're dealing with a married couple. They're selling this house. If you get one signature but not the other, is it a valid listing agreement? It's just not a valid listing agreement if you don't have both of their signatures. That's the point that I was going for. To collect the brokerage commission, clearly your first bullet point is going to be a very important one to the real estate commission. You're not going to get paid unless you have a valid real estate license. And what I mean by valid is not only do you have one, but it's on active status at the time that you earn the compensation. Man, that sentence right there was actually amazing. Yeah, it was just chock full of important stuff. You have to have a license. It has to be active at the time that you earn the compensation. Dennis and I got into an interesting conversation the other day about the fact you can be paid when your license is on inactive status, as long as what you're getting paid for was done when your license was active. The best example of that is a referral fee that I give him today. I give him a referral today. He doesn't sell the house until October when my license is inactive, but he can pay me that referral fee because I was active at the time I gave that, okay? I don't know that that's going to be a big deal for test purposes, but it seems like it's important information. Also, on the idea of the valid real estate license, look, if you don't have a real estate license and your mom and dad ask you to manage their real estate portfolio, can you do it? Yeah. Can they pay you for it? No. When you do the brokerage activity for compensation, so you're sharp. So you tell this, mom and dad, listen, you can't pay me for managing your properties. But how about you let me live in one of the units for free and then I'll do it? No, because that's compensating you for doing a brokerage activity. It wasn't cash, but the rule doesn't talk about cash. The rule talks about valuable consideration, and that clearly is consideration, okay? Yeah?
On the agency agreement, just going back, say you bring a buyer and you start the process, they put an offer and it's accepted, but the agency agreement expires before closing.
Okay.
Are you still able to get?
Well, what happens in that particular case, the answer is yes, you're absolutely entitled. Because remember, your job was to procure the buyer, or in the seller's case, the seller. If you're a listing agent, procure the buyer. If you're a buyer's agent, help them find the house and go into contract. So you're absolutely entitled. They actually, it would be in their best interest to extend the contract as well. Because you've already earned your compensation. If they don't want to continue to use you as an agent, they don't have to, but you earn your compensation when you perform according to that. Okay. All right, and then obviously you have to have an agency agreement. Procuring cause of sale, I don't talk a lot about it in this class because I don't think we're going to test you. It's more of a realtor concept than it is a real estate commission concept. But if you ever see the words procuring cause of sale, what it means is this. The agent who started the series of unbroken events that ultimately led to a sale. Okay? Again, it's a realtor concept. So if you're going to get paid, you have to have a license, you have to have an agency agreement, and then you're the one who brought the buyer to the property, so to speak, okay? We will not go gray on you in this particular case. This is not that kind of test. Commission sharing. I'm sorry, I skipped something there, but listing fee arrangements, you're okay with those words, right? Flat fee, percentage, net, these are all legal in North Carolina. You won't be asked to calculate it as part of this part of the class. Commission sharing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The combination of a percentage and net, meaning, dear Mr. Barr, I'm only going to pay you off the seller's net, does that allow you?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much anything you can write into a sentence is allowed, but don't worry about confusing it on the test. We won't go that complicated for you. Okay. Commission sharing. Do you understand the function of the MLS? See if you understand this comment. If I were to make this comment. The MLS is in fact a database, right? Okay. The MLS, I've talked about this a couple of times, but just to kind of bring it home, is also a compensation, a cooperation agreement. If you bring a buyer, I will pay you this, which brings up this question. In the event that there's a dispute between two agents over compensation, is it going to do the agents any good to call the real estate commission? No. Do not call the real estate commission. Call the board of realtors, the Association of Realtors Board of Arbitrations. Call them. Do not call the commission. The commission does not arbitrate disputes regarding compensation. Have you heard me say that? Yes. Good. And I don't know if I said this in this way, but let me say this as well. The commission also does not speak as to the enforceability of contracts. Even though the commission says, go out and practice competently, they don't look at contracts and determine whether they're valid or not. It's not their job, okay? They don't arbitrate disputes regarding compensation. They don't speak to the validity of contracts. If you call and ask them a question about a contract, they will probably help you understand what it means, but they are not going to determine the validity of the contract. Function of the MLS. Listen, if I put it in the MLS and I ask you to bring me buyers, does that guarantee that every buyer is going to be well qualified? No. Who do I have to rely on to make sure that all the buyers will be well qualified? I have to rely on you to do your jobs. It's a material fact about the ability of a principal in a transaction to complete the transaction, right? So I have to rely on you to have done that. Disclosure of third-party compensation. Man, I almost hid that, but that should not be hidden. You need to put a star beside disclosure of third-party compensation. This is going to be a question. It's going to be a hard question, and you need to be specific about this. There is a great example in Appendix A, okay? And let me remind you of this. Disclosure of third-party compensation. If you want to have a short, pithy thing to say here, you could say that disclosure of third-party compensation must be done in a full and timely manner and reduced to writing no later than the when? Offer to purchase, okay? I'm not through yet. Full and timely, okay? In writing no later than the offer to purchase. Does that mean that the timely disclosure of this could be verbal? Yeah, it could be verbal. We're looking at 5 houses today. On house number 3, I'm giving not only my commission, but a $2,000 bonus, okay? That's disclosure, and it was verbal. If we don't buy house number 3, there's nothing for me to put in writing. You understand what I'm saying? So would it be true to say that it must be put in writing before I show the property? That would actually be an overstatement of the rule. Are you with me? This will be a level 3 question, so it's going to be tough. Full and timely disclosure in writing no later than the offer to purchase. I told you I wasn't through, so let me remind this to you. If you are making an offer on house number 3, which has a $2,000 bonus, you disclosed it before you showed it. We're now making an offer. It's time to put it in writing no later than the offer to purchase. Can we just write that in the offer to purchase?
No.
Why not? Compensation is not. Dennis, you are 2 for 2. Dennis, I'm going to sit beside Dennis on Wednesday. Good job. Nothing about your compensation in the offer to purchasing contract because you agent, are not a party to the offer to purchasing contract. That is exactly where I want you to be on that. Commission doesn't arbitrate disputes. I already said that. The offer to purchase sales contract. Look at what my first bullet point here is. The commission, you've heard me say this a couple of times, does not require you to use a specific form. Be ready for this on the test. They'll make it sound like they do, but the commission never tells you what form to use. Okay? They have looked at the forms, and they said the ones that we have in our book, hey, they look okay to us. So use them for the appropriate transaction. Okay? And Martina was showing me a question in one of the test books. I think it was the state license book, which was a great question. Because as we're asking, part of this question is we're talking about forms. And I don't need you to memorize a lot of these forms, but I need you to know that certain ones exist. When you're selling a parcel of vacant land, would you use standard form 2T to sell vacant land? No. Because we have a form called the vacant land lot offer to purchasing contract. Now, I don't need you to know a lot about that form. I need you to know that it exists. Form 2T would most likely be used for the sale of single-family homes, condos, townhouses, stuff like that. Up to about 4 units, it's probably okay. But land, we have a form specifically for that purpose. So we wouldn't use this form for that purpose. Does that make sense where we're going for that? A couple of the other forms that I pointed out to you specifically, the backup contract addendum, don't worry about memorizing the form. Know why it exists. If I'm making an offer on a property that's already under contract, I want to be next in line. The contingent sale addendum, ooh, this is good while we're on this point. The contingent sale addendum. Do you remember when we used the contingent sale addendum? I'm making an offer on your property in Cary, knowing that I need to sell my house in Texas. Okay, everybody remember that? Now, that was actually not the good point that I thought of as I was saying this. The contracts that we use now have very, very few contingencies. Okay? And Martina, this will be important to you from this standpoint because you're just the state side. Our contract has a due diligence period, right? We wiped out contingencies when we came up with the due diligence period. If you want a contingency in that contract, you're going to need to write it in, like the contingent sale addendum. Are you with me so far? So let me ask you this question. If it is during the due diligence period and the appraisal comes back low, you made an offer of 200, the appraisal comes back at 190. You can't get the seller to budge on the price. So the buyer decides to walk away during the due diligence period. Do they get their earnest money back? Yes. If they walk away during the due diligence period, they do. Do they get their due diligence money back? No, because this contract was not contingent upon this house appraisal. Let's go a step farther. What if it's after the due diligence period? Then the house doesn't appraise and the buyer chooses to walk away. Now what have they lost? Due diligence and their earnest money, and they're not getting that price back for that appraisal either, or inspection, or survey if they've done it. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are no contingencies. There used to be contingencies in our contract for all of these. If it doesn't appraise, you can get your money back. Not anymore. Okay? If you're not satisfied with the results of your inspection, buyer, if you're not satisfied with the results of your inspection, you better do what? Walk away. You better do it when? During the due diligence period if you want to save your earnest money. So don't fall for any question on this test that leads you to believe that there are contingencies in this contract. There just aren't. Loan is not a contingency. Appraisal, not a contingency. What's that one? Inspections, not a contingency. Okay? Good. Yeah?
Is it a standard period of time for the due diligence, or do you still like?
Nope, completely negotiable. Completely negotiable. Yep.
Just a quick question. Has North Carolina found that to be the best way to deal with contingencies?
What North Carolina has found is that real estate agents can screw anything up. It doesn't matter how you write it, we'll figure out a way to do it. Some people like it, some people do not.
So there's no third party on anything?
No, you'd have to literally use a different form, which the commission says is okay.
Okay.
But, okay, let's turn that into a test question.
Okay.
You're not happy with the forms that we have? Can you go out and draft a new one?
No.
No? Can you use an old one? No, because what happens is they're copyrighted forms. So you can't use one when they're out of copyright. What would you suggest to your client if they're not content with these forms? See? See. And that's the way, from a test question standpoint, we're still in its infancy right now. It's about 50-50. Let's see. Discuss the parole evidence rule. I did not spell parole incorrectly. That is actually the way it says. It's a Latin word, I guess. The parole evidence rule is the oral evidence rule. Here's what the oral evidence rule says. You can write it down if you want to, but you'll actually understand it. The written word, obviously contract, right? The written word will take precedence over any unwritten agreement to the contrary. For those of you who are writing it down, you're probably saying, why did I just write that down? That's obvious. The written word will take precedence over any oral agreement to the contrary. Would you like to turn that into a test question? How about this? Dennis, the refrigerator goes with the house. I'm giving it to you. Okay? The refrigerator, by the way, is not a built-in. He writes up an offer. He does not put the refrigerator in the contract. Later, I take the refrigerator with me. Have I done anything wrong? No, because the verbal agreement means nothing if there's a written contract. And what did the written contract say about the refrigerator? Nothing. That's the parole evidence rule. And that's a great example of what it looks like for test purposes, okay? Doesn't matter. Any preliminary negotiation, if it's not reduced to writing, does not exist.
We need to know that it's, we need to know that it's called the parole.
No, I just like to use words like that because it makes me sound smart. Offers, counter offers. When can you terminate? When can you terminate an offer? What's my main rule that I really want you to focus on? Any time before it becomes a contract. If you'll stick with that rule, it will help you on all the other rules, right? You can terminate any offer at any time until it becomes a contract. Okay? What if I promised you I wouldn't terminate it? You can terminate it anyway if it's an offer. Okay? Watch out for that on the exam. Please understand two things. I can terminate any offer until it becomes a contract, and don't forget that a counter offer is in fact a termination. Okay? Effective counter offer, there it is. When do offers become contracts? How are you studying for this? My midterm exam. How many of you took my midterm, my 5, 6, 12 exam, and you swore that I was wrong? I mean, you read these and you just knew that I was wrong. Turns out I think I'm right on every one of them, okay? So go and understand them. You may have to send me some quick panic questions. Well, let me talk to you about quick panic questions. It won't do you any good to send me any on Tuesday night because I'll be in class till 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, okay? So you need to get them to me earlier in the day, or you can text me. I'm going to take some people's text privileges away because they'll text you up till 11 o'clock. Lord. I mean, how'd you get my phone number? How'd you get my phone number? No, actually, it's okay. Almost anything's wide open. It's just that there will be a period of time there that I will not be responding because I'm in class. Installment land contract. Contract for D. Contract for D. Remember, a type of seller financing, but an installment land contract, who holds title? Seller holds title, they're going to deliver it when? When you pay them off. The seller has legal title. The buyer has what? Equitable title. Advantages and disadvantages, maybe just a little bit on the contract for D. Advantages to the buyer, he doesn't have to go to a bank. Advantages to the seller, he opens up a whole pool of buyers. Disadvantage to the buyer, what happens if the buyer tries to sell that property? It's not even in his name. It might cause a stain on the title. And disadvantages to the seller, what if the buyer doesn't pay you? Getting rid of them might take more work than what you thought it was going to take, okay? So, I mean, keep it that straightforward. Do you remember that a contract for deed is both a conveyance instrument and a financing instrument? Does that sound familiar to you? Okay. Do you remember another type of seller financing where the seller will deliver title and then put a lien on it? Purchase money mortgage. So you might want to make a note to yourself, compare contract for deed and purchase money mortgage. Just for the basics, don't play attorney on it, okay? As you go over to the next page, you're looking at the option to purchase. And let me remind you, at the end of chapter 10, which is where we are right now, one of the most important factors is to understand this. We don't have standard forms for these. And so basically what we were telling you at the end of chapter 10 is that we don't have standard forms for these, and your client needs one. Make sure they go to an attorney